Hi, welcome to this webinar where Sarah Wakefield and I will be talking about pre-K writers. And we're going to talk specifically about drawing and how drawing is writing, and how we did a lesson in Miss Wakefield's room about using lines to show movement with pre-K writers and drawers and artists. So my name is Katie McKay, and I am a co-director and teacher consultant with the Heart of Texas Writing Project, which is located in Austin, Texas. And I work in schools coaching teachers who have multilingual students in their classrooms. At the school where Sarah Wakefield works, I coach teachers who have refugees specifically in their classrooms. And that's how Sarah Wakefield and I met this year as we worked together to support her pre-K students. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Sarah?
Sure. My name is Sarah Wakefield. I'm an ESL pre-K4 teacher at the Austin Independent School District at the school's Travis Heights Elementary School in Austin, Texas. I don't know if Katie mentioned that. I can't remember. It's an urban school. It's a great place to be. This is my fourth year teaching ESL pre-K at this school, and the first year that I've gotten to do the writing project with Miss McKay. So very excited.
Awesome. And Sarah, will you tell us a little bit more about your class this year?
Sure. My class this year fluctuated between 22 and 24 students, primarily my number being 22 students. Every student in my class was low on the socioeconomic scale. All of them qualified for free and reduced lunch. Of the 22 students in my class, half of my class were refugee students from primarily Afghanistan and Iraq. I had 5 languages in my classroom this year. And I would say English was not the predominant language. Pashto primarily was the dominant language this year. I had a couple Arabic speakers, a couple that spoke Dari and Farsi, and many of whom, with the rest of my students, spoke Spanish at home. So they knew a lot of English as well, but definitely was not their primary language. So it was very much a mix of students this year. And pretty equally divided between boys and girls as well. So that was, usually it's heavier on one end, but this year pretty equally divided.
And if I can just say, anytime I walked into Sarah's classroom, it was a very joyful room. The kids were always happy and active and moving and just enjoying each other, enjoying Miss Wakefield, enjoying each other. And that was just always amazing to see. I loved coming in and getting to be a part of her classroom. One thing also that we bought this year and we looked at was part of our professional learning was this book, Talking, Drawing, Writing by Martha Horn and Mary Ellen Jacob. And that was a good part. I think it was a nice way for us to start the year. I think we maybe looked at a little bit of this together and we started talking about how important those lessons for just turning and talking and looking at each other, we're listening to each other, and then starting to use drawing and drawing lessons.
I had the pleasure of meeting Katie, let me say, at the beginning of the school year, and my teammate and I think we're both feeling overwhelmed with how many different languages we had in the classroom and how we were going to adequately meet the needs of all of our students this year. It's definitely always challenging, but with so many different languages and so many students coming in with English not as their primary language, and many of whom spoke little to no English at all, we were very stressed at the beginning of the school year, and Katie was, I think, walking by the class one day, and we scooped her up and pulled her in, and she had this amazing idea of doing the writing workshop in our classroom. And from that moment on, things changed with our school year and how things progressed. And you know, the kids got along so well because they could communicate, and they started communicate you know, through their writing and their words and stories and movements. So it was a great thing. And thank you, Katie, for coming in.
Oh, well, I'm just excited that you were open to trying it and that we got to work together too. before we actually look at this one specific lesson, Sarah, would you just tell us a little bit about what are a couple of lessons that you did early in the year to get your young writers kind of into routines or getting them going?
So definitely at the beginning of the year, it's a lot of introduction of vocabulary and, how to use writing utensils and where the writing utensils go and that they have a spot and that we have to take care of them. And Katie had the idea of using folders instead of journals, which was fantastic for my class. They really enjoyed having the whole paper to write on. And one of the things that we taught, even before we had the writing in the class, was red means stop and green means go. And we do that when we're walking in the hallway or walking on the sidewalk to recess. And so the kids knew red means stop and green means go. And those are what we chose to do the writing folders with. So we learned how to play with the papers. Like if they were done with a piece of work, they got to move it to the red side and they knew stop, they were done with that one. And green meant that they were still working on it and that they could come back to it. Those were two of the main things at the beginning of the school year that the kids had to get used to, was that they didn't have to get something on the paper and be done with it, that they could actually come back to it and add the details. And as the lessons progressed, we definitely taught, top, middle, and bottom of the paper, how to use the whole paper. A lot of kids would only choose one color to do their pictures in the beginning. And sorry about that. So we taught them that it's okay to choose a different color or use lots of colors. And another thing was to use shapes. We start at the beginning of the year with drawing self-portraits, and we move into drawing families. And, how can we get that down on paper? We have to go through what body parts there are and how we can draw long hair or short hair. So things that you take for granted as an older adult or, as an older student even, definitely these kids come in not knowing how to get something down on the paper that they think is appropriate. I think they have concepts in their little minds too of what something should look like and that it's okay to make mistakes. I show them at the beginning, in my drawing, that my drawings aren't perfect either, and it's okay to make a mistake, and we can start over, we can get a new paper, we can turn the paper over. So it's a lot of those little tiny nuances that maybe we take for granted, that these kids come in not knowing what to do, but through the process we teach them how to get that, and then their drawings become amazing. It's really something to see.
Well, that's really helpful, Sarah, because I think we really see that as we look at these student samples. I wouldn't want a pre-K teacher to look at these and get overwhelmed because of how much teaching went into, if you even look at these first samples that we're going to look at more in a minute, look at how many colors there are on the page. And a lot of these kids, like you mentioned, might have started with just one color.
Absolutely.
And you taught that explicitly, that illustrators can use many colors. Another thing I remember you telling me about was how we struggled with what materials to have out, which utensils to have them use. The markers were getting in the way of the clarity of their writing. And so then I know the last time I was in your room, I saw that you had moved to starting with pencils and then bringing in the other colors a little bit, a few minutes into workshops so that they would have kind of an outline to their drawings. You can see how much more successful they were in drawing clearly in these two pictures especially.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely that became a big thing where we'd start at the carpet with a clipboard, a piece of paper, and a pencil. And that was kind of getting our idea down on the paper before we had to add those extra details in or think about colors even. We could think about the underlying concept of what they wanted to write about before adding in the other stuff. So that was the learning process for me too, because generally it's give them the bucket of crayons and markers or pencils and let them choose. But really I had to figure out that that was too much for them, and that starting with a pencil and getting them to put their idea down on paper was a better way to start. And then they were excited about going back and adding the details with colors, but they got their concept down on the paper first.
And I think you'll see that, and it depends any given year and any teacher exactly how they end up using their tools. But what I like about what you did there is they still got the choice, they still got to use those other tools, but you scaffolded for them when you saw that that really was going to help them as a group. So yeah, it seemed
Not
to
to scare any teachers, but this class did really well with my Sharpies. The other markers, for whatever reason, we couldn't keep the lids on them and we threw a lot of them away. But this class, I don't know if it's because we made a special deal about how special the Sharpies were, but they loved to go in and add the details with Sharpies, and they took really good care of them. So,
Well, I think that's a big, it's a big part of workshop is figuring out how you do make a big deal about materials and what materials they'll think are a big deal, and then using those so that they are really thinking about how important the tools we use as writers are.
absolutely.
So let's go ahead and look. We're going to look first at this picture here. This is just of me teaching the lesson that we did the other day. So this is toward the end of the year. I mean, we were in the last weeks of school really when we did this. This kids were already in the habit of coming to the carpet for a mini lesson. They were used to like the idea that they'd be there for about 10 minutes and that they'd be heading back to their seats to get started after that, and then that they'd have share time at the end. And then every time that I've done a lesson, and the lessons also that we see from Talking, Drawing, Writing, and a lot of other of our workshop kind of writing workshop gurus that we can read about, they follow a similar pattern to their mini lessons, like the one I did here, where I started out with a link where students could hear that I understood that this was a continuation of what they'd been working on. It wasn't completely in isolation. That here I talked to them about that they're writers that have been writing and drawing about things in their life.
And they really like being called writers. I mean, that was a connection every time they came to the carpet for writing time. To get to call themselves a writer, I think made them feel very important. So that's something that even when you were in the classroom, that's something we still did every day and followed this model also. So
great. I'm so glad to hear that, because I think you're right. It is such an important word to be using immediately with them, so that identity isn't growing over time, but it's just that's who we are. That's who we are today already. So then the teaching point, like the lessons you talked about doing, just one simple teaching point, really direct, focused teaching point each time. It helps us keep our mini lessons short, but also it helps the kids to just know this is the one thing I want you to think about today. And then it's also an invitation. One thing we'll see is that in these samples we're going to look at, there were several kids who did do this teaching point, which was how to use lines to show movement, kind of like Mo Willems does in his books. And not all kids were ready for that. Not all kids, or if they were ready, they decided not to that day. They had something else they were working on and they didn't apply it. So it wasn't about us going around saying, you didn't add the lines, go add the lines now. It was just a tip. Yeah, this is a tip for writers that you might use today or you might use on any other day that you're writing. And then for the demonstration, like we talked about throughout the year, is it varies how we might demonstrate it. On this day, I showed it in a book, the Mo Willems book, and then I also drew it in front of them for a teacher model.
And that's what we did on a daily basis too. And I did not change the mini lessons every day. It just kind of depended on how they went each and every day, whether I thought we needed to revisit that one again. Sometimes the concept took, a whole week to accomplish, and, kids wanted to come back to their writings and keep working on it and keep adding details. So it doesn't have to be regimented. It can be somewhat fluid as well.
Yeah. For our student engagement, we had the students turn and talk, which was something I know that you did every day for your lessons too, so that they would be able to do that talking piece of writing, which is really oral composition on the carpet with a partner. Did you have them have the same partner all the time they turned to, or is it just anyone near them?
No, it was their choice for sure. In the beginning, we started with I paired them up, but towards the end when they were comfortable with each other and, pretty much anybody could talk to anybody in the classroom. This was a pretty special class where they all got along well and were excited to talk. And every couple weeks I changed carpet spots, and so that they would be sitting by different people. But they were really good about turning to, you know, whoever didn't have a partner next to them and having that conversation with them. So
Well, I think that's a big credit to you as a teacher too, Wakefield, not just the group, but you're just the joy you bring in the classroom. In this picture, what you see that we're up and we're actually acting it out, and this is a drama-based instruction tool or strategy that we can use. Just acting out really helps with revision and helps with writing. I remember Kamaya here spinning around like a ballerina. This student here with the, I think it's Atal with the dinosaurs on his shirt. He was playing basketball and dribbling, I remember. And so they were all acting out different types of movements that they like to do and different types of sports and things that they like to do that they might write about when they got to their seats.
and definitely at the pre-K level and any level, doing those movements, you know, having them do those movements really solidifies that concept that you're getting, because they love to be active and be a part of that as well. Makes them feel a part of the lesson.
Yeah, they were having a good time, but and really respectful of each other's spaces too. You know, whenever we get up, you're not sure
That's for
how it
sure.
might go with pre-K, but they did a great job with it. So we're going to look at a couple of examples of student writing and what they did. And these videos are actually videos that I did later on after the lesson. So sometimes I take videos of the actual conference in that moment, but in this case, I had students go back later and tell me about their drawing. This is Ahmad, is that right?
Ahmad, yes.
Who's Ahmad as a writer and just as a person?
So Ahmad came into the classroom with very limited English skills. He was definitely very active and very animated and excited. He loved dinosaurs and balls, and he was so excited about school. I mean, he definitely came in every day with a smile on his face, and he was excited to be there. His writing in the beginning of the school year was very basic and limited. He was definitely one of the ones that would choose just one color, usually brown or black, and he would be lucky to get one small piece of writing on a paper. So coming in and looking at this video, showing movement and having the whole story to tell with it, you know, definitely I saw him progress as a student when he gained a lot more vocabulary and he could express how he was feeling. But definitely he loved school, and I think was very excited to be able to convey what he was trying to tell us, and that he could come to speak in full sentences, and he had a way to express himself. So, but very much all boy, loved sports and athletics, and anything really, balls and dinosaurs were his thing. And so
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and watch this, and then we can talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
A little bit about what's happening in this awesome drawing that you did. What's happening here?
My dad helped me get my sister.
And tell me about, what are you guys doing?
Playing basketball, American football, basketball, and volleyball, and a basket.
Yeah. So, tell me about these lines that you have. What are those lines showing?
To the basket to pick a ball.
Yeah, so there's one where he's shooting it to the basket, is that right? And she's kicking a ball. And those lines show it how it's moving, just like they did in the Elephant and Piggy books, didn't they? That's awesome. So this is your dad and this is your sister. You're not in the picture? Are you in the picture? Is this you over here? Yeah, is your sister older or younger than you? Is she older? How old is your sister?
7 years old.
She's 7, so she's a little older than you. I can tell because the size, you made her a little bit bigger. So I just love looking at this piece, and especially knowing the many lessons that you had taught prior to this piece. You can just see so much evidence of that here. I'm gonna minimize this.
Okay. I love that he got circles in there and triangles, and we definitely talk a lot about using shapes in our drawing. And he had, I think, every kind of ball in the picture. That the lines were going all over, and his sister in there as well. So that was amazing.
He definitely has action as an author and an illustrator, and it's so clearly, even the arch of this here and the arch, then we see with the ball going up into the sky here, or the basket and the arms outstretched and reaching up. The way her legs are.
That was in one of them also. So
tell me what again?
There's a zigzag line coming down from one of them also. I thought
this one, yeah, I noticed that too. I didn't think to ask him about that, but it made me think of maybe a dribbling, a bouncing or something, maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can see evidence of your top, middle, bottom of the page lessons too.
Right.
And the different colors. Sometimes what we do with the kids is actually count how many colors he used. He used black, brown, green, purple, and red, and pencil. So encouraging them to use many different colors.
And that's a big step for him because, like I said, he came from using one color only and one tiny shape on a paper, and explaining with vocabulary and showing those lines. Like you said before, not all of them, took to the lesson and wanted to show movement in their pictures, but for him to be able to do that and explain that and have the balls going in different directions and arching and zigzagging, that's quite an accomplishment for him.
Yeah, another thing I think if I were to talk to him again about his writing is just how he was able to show perspective.
Right.
That having somebody in the front of the picture and the back of the picture, the size,
Mm-hmm.
the balls are different sizes. It's almost like this one moving away is farther away as it's smaller. This one's closer to us, it's bigger. And that's something actually really advanced for an illustrator to be doing. And if we pointed it out to him, I bet he could even build on that and continue to use that idea of perspective in his drawings.
I bet he would too, yes. Mm-hmm.
And even using that word perspective with a pre-K student, eventually they'll start being able to apply it to other situations in the perspective of who's speaking, who's telling the story, and so when we start using that vocabulary and talking about their drawings and the things they're already doing, it gives them the opportunity to then apply that knowledge in other areas as well.
I think that's pretty important to remember, that we can use those big words of pre-K and that they will become understanding of what we're talking about, and they will begin to use those words and understand what they mean to as they progress through the years in school. So even these kiddos that come in not knowing, English, if we start using these words and start modeling and, explaining, they're going to understand exactly what we mean and what we are looking for and want to. I mean, they're such pleasers at this age that they want to do it. And if you show any sort of excitement about their drawing or writing, that makes them all the more excited too. And they love to do it. I had such a hard time, with some of these writers and non-English speakers that came in, pulling them away and getting them to stop every day to come back to want to share, because they were so into their writing and they didn't want to put it down. And they realized that they could keep it on the green side and keep going, but they were just so much into it, and they'd have conversations at their tables and compare drawings. And so getting that vocabulary and conversation was amazing. And these boys that sat together a lot definitely had these conversations about playing at home and playing in the parking lot of the apartments where they live and with their older brothers and sisters. And so that all plays a part in helping them learn and progress, I think. So
definitely. I love this one. This is a really short video, but this author really loved. I could picture them spinning in the acting out part, and then also thinking about Piggy spinning here. Let's just watch this one. Watch this one really quick.
So this is your ballerina, and here are these. Show me. Point to her arms. Yes, I see them. Are these them reaching up here and over here? And are these the lines to show that she's spinning, 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 spinning? That's amazing.
So this one's cut a little bit short, but my first reaction when I walked up that I think I shared with you is that, did she scribble out her drawing? Did she not like it and change her mind? And I want to find out what's going on there.
Right,
Um,
right.
and then when I looked closer, like generally happens when we look
Arms
closely at
overhead.
students writing, yeah, we can see those arms upstretched and even her head tilted to the side. It made me think of like a ballerina I've seen on a music box, with kind of the head tilted and spinning around. And it is so much like the drawing of Piggy there with so
Absolutely.
many lines to show that movement.
I think initially when you look at some of the drawings that the kids do, it may not look like much in the beginning, but after you speak to these kiddos, they really do have something in mind when they're drawing. And to get them to explain it, and then you can come to see like the arms and the spinning. I mean, this little girl definitely was a little ballerina herself and loved to dance in the classroom. So I know that's one thing that she really connected with in the book that you shared with them. And then for her to be able to put that on paper is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, I also love the speed to which the fact that she drew it as fast as she did, it was like her hand was spinning with the ballerina over and over and over, and it makes you dizzy, kind of like Piggy.
It does, yeah. It makes you think actually what she was picturing in her mind as she was putting that on the paper.
Yeah. Also the eyes. Look at those eyes just like really staring at you. It makes me think of the ballerina fixing their eyes on a specific spot so that they don't lose their balance or get dizzy.
Exactly.
The head, it almost seems like the head is staying in place while the rest of the body is going. And ballerinas kind of feel that way because of how quickly they move their head around when you're watching one on stage.
And she got the hair flowing back as well. So.
She did get that hair flowing back. So we're going to look at a couple more examples of students who applied this lesson. Here again, we have some of those lines here. Can you tell us about this student?
So this little girl lives in an apartment complex in the neighborhood and has a couple older siblings, but is closest to a sibling that's in first grade. So definitely, similar in age. This picture surprised me a little bit because the background that this little girl has with two parents that fall a little bit on the special needs spectrum themselves and not having exposure to some of these things. When she explained that this was hitting a ball off a tee, she very much knew what T-ball was, and that the other person in the drawing is catching the ball, and she showed those dotted lines, and she has the blue sky at the top. Just the way that she described it, and was pretty amazing with her background and not. I know that she hasn't played T-ball. I know that she hasn't been exposed to it, but I'm wondering if an older sibling has a little bit, or as she's heard an older sibling talk about it a little bit, so that she had that little bit of background knowledge in her head before putting it on paper.
I remember talking with her too about this and how the ball is now coming all the way down here, and she used her finger to show that this is the mitt.
Oh, yes.
Here, and you can see the little ball here in the mitt as well. And then there's evidence too that when I did my drawing, and I think we've done lessons in your class before of using ovals to draw people.
Yes.
So the legs show that she was using those ovals so that she could show the joints in the arms. We talked about how one oval is from the shoulder to the elbow, and then from the elbow to the wrist, and the wrist to the hand. You can see right here the little hand on there. The elbow.
I love how she has the legs kind of spread apart to show that one leg is, in front of the other leg a little bit, like you would stand holding a bat.
Absolutely, that's really true. And then I see these lines behind, which is maybe the swing of the bat happening.
Oh, yes.
And then again, that perspective, that top, middle, and bottom lesson, I think really meant a lot to them. We often see kids who just draw the grass on the bottom, and then everyone's standing on that grass, and the rest of the top is the sky. But knowing that they can use the middle of the page there
We
for
talked
people.
about that a lot, yeah, and that was hard at the beginning for them to understand, but I think as the year progressed, they could really visualize, you know, different parts of the paper, and that some things were closer to you and some things needed to appear further away. And we talked about that a lot, and this class was really receptive to using the whole paper and, you know, wanting to get everything on there. So
Absolutely. Another thing that I think about a lot with those lessons that you taught them about shapes is how much that translates then to their writing. You know,
absolutely.
and I know that as teachers we feel this pressure to move ahead, to move on, move on. So not only are the students already able to compose and to record the stories from their lives immediately in this way without having to wait until they have more concepts of print and of phonetics, but they're also practicing those skills that they will need for when they're ready to add the letters onto the page. So this student here has circles and ovals down. They have lines, horizontal and vertical. Those are all, and curves. Those are all things that are going to help the student when she's writing more text as well.
Absolutely, yes.
We're going to move on to the last little video here. This one's so fun to watch too. Let's go ahead and will you just tell us first who is Kamaya as a student and a person?
So Kamaya, the sweetest little girl you could ever imagine, all girl for sure, loved dancing and was very meticulous about wanting to get every detail on her paper every time. And she definitely was receptive with every lesson and, you know, wanting to pick up tips and how to go about getting everything that she wanted to express on the paper. She's got a lot of family around her, and that's important to her. She's got a little sister, mom and grandma, and she always talks about them a lot and wants to incorporate that into her drawings. And as you can see, her people are smiling. She's filled with a lot of love and just the sweetest little girl. So her drawings were always so fun.
Awesome. Let's look at this.
Maya, will you tell me about this piece? Will you point to the parts and tell me about it?
Okay, so this is me, and then these are all grown-ups and kids.
Grown-ups and kids?
And there are kids here outside, and then they're clapping for me.
Yeah.
And I said, good job. And these are all the windows. This is the window, that's the sun.
So is this the building behind you? So you're outside in the sun and they're in front of you clapping, and then behind you there's this big building? Yes. And tell me about what you're wearing here.
A skirt.
A skirt? What kind of skirt?
It's like a pink top.
With a pink top? Is it a dress? Is it a dress you wear for dancing?
No, it's a tutu.
It's a tutu? So I see, wow, look at the tutu here. It's beautiful. And show me, what are these lines here?
For twirling.
For twirling. Is that like what Piggy does when she's twirling in her tutu? And here you are. You know, when I see your arms are stretched up above your head. Because you're going to twirl, yes. And even some of the movement lines are pink and some of them are in pencil.
No, this is the stage. I'm standing on the
Oh, thank you for correcting me. This is the stage. You're standing on the stage. And these lines are to show that you're twirling. And tell me about these pink lines down here. Is that them clapping? That's their hands moving and clapping for you? That's beautiful, Kamaya. You know, when we looked at the Mo Willems book the other day, you really understood that lines can show movement in our drawing. So whenever you're drawing, Kamaya, you can do just like you did this time, and you can use some lines to show the movement in your picture. That's beautiful.
I love listening to her talk about her work.
She definitely was so proud of her work and loved to tell stories. And Like I said, she loved the details in her pictures, and she was one that always wanted to come back to different writings, and when she would think of something, she would add it in. And I loved the stage and the windows, and that she was outside, there was the sunshine and the audience with clapping and stuff. She did very well.
Yeah, and I love that she corrected me there. I think it shows that the kids really have an idea of what it is they're doing. They know who's in the picture, they know their intentions, and that when we stop and really listen to them talk about what they've done, that we learn so much from them. And so
And
much
she had the confidence to be able to say something, and she was confident about her picture and proud of herself. So
right. And I think that's such that's an example, Miss Wakefield, of what you created in your classroom, that your students have the independence and the autonomy and the agency to say, this is my work, I take ownership of it, I'm the author, I know what's here. And there isn't this, I'm drawing because I'm trying to figure out what the teacher wants me to draw or say, but I'm doing this because it means something to me, and I'm going to explain to you what it is. And I'll help you out if you don't understand completely the first time around, like she did for me here. I've only met Kamaya a few times, but she clearly had that confidence in what she had done to share with me the specifics of her work.
they were all so proud of what they worked on, and definitely they worked really hard this year. And like I said, getting them to be able to stop was one thing, but then they love to be able to tell their stories in front of others as well. So
that sharing piece.
No, there was no fear at all whatsoever this year. They were storytellers and writers, and it was an amazing thing.
Awesome. Well, I thought we would just kind of end with this quote. Actually, I didn't even put together that word rehearsal. It makes me think too of the ballerinas, but that they say in Talking, Drawing, Writing is that drawing is not a rehearsal for writing. Drawing is writing. And I think we see that really so much in those examples, is that these students are composing, they're revising, they're thinking about their audience, they're thinking about the details of what actually happened, they're thinking about how they can make that more clear for their reader, and that all of those skills are skills that that authors use in their published authors use every day in their illustrations and in their writing. So I'm just excited about continuing to work with you and to see what your pre-Kers do next year.
I'm so excited for next year already, and I can't wait to see where these kiddos continue on with their writing in kindergarten. I'll be anxious to talk to their teachers. So I think truly they have the platform already, and they're really gonna excel.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wakefield, for all your work this year.
No, thank you, Ms. McKay. It was great working with you.